I'm Jeff Mixon, and this is another episode of the Civitas Institute's Talk of the State program. Joining me today is our budget and tax specialist here at Civitas, Brian Balfour. Brian, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
We're going to talk about the budget, oddly enough. We spend a lot of time talking about the budget, but that's about 90% of what they do here at the legislature in Raleigh. So currently, there is a tentative agreement between the North Carolina House and the North Carolina Senate on how much money they have decided to add in taxes. So Brian, tell us a little bit about what they've come up with.
Well, that's right, Jeff. They've come up with the new tax plan they've kind of tentatively agreed to actually would raise taxes in the current fiscal year just under $1 billion. That's billion, yes, with a B. The big ticket items on this, of course, is the 1 cent sales tax. Other taxes of note, of course, the sin taxes. We're looking at a 10-cent per pack cigarette tax increase. Tax increases on alcohol as well. Sin taxes totaling about $74 million out of that. Also digital downloads and online purchases, a lot of talk on that is included, a tax on those items as well. And one thing of note, as well as this 2% income tax surcharge that they included, and what that is basically it's basically a tax on top of a tax. So for those people who do their taxes at the end of the year, usually you maybe you owe a little bit more, or you get a little bit of a refund from the state. For those people who actually end up owing a little bit at the end of the year, they want to assess a 2% surcharge on top of whatever amount you owe.
Now, would that tend to make people overpay their taxes?
Yeah, well, basically that's kind of an incentive to make sure that people are, if anything, overpaying throughout the year. Obviously, from the state's perspective, it's a way to make sure that they're getting more money throughout the year. Right. Basically, give us your money as soon as possible. But I suspect the same courtesy will not be extended to people who overpaid throughout the year. I mean, my question is, if I get then a tax refund from the state for overpaying throughout the year, then am I going to get a 2% bonus, refund back on my refund? So I highly doubt that. So it's kind of a one-way street when you're talking about the government.
Just this year, the tax refunds, the state income tax refunds, were delayed. So there's your concrete example right there. So the governor doesn't like this proposal. She doesn't like this agreement. And so we understand that she's made some veto threats. It would be her first budget that she vetoes, but what do you think? Why does Governor Perdue not like this agreement that the legislature's come up with?
Well, Governor Perdue, she's come out and publicly stated that the big sticking point is actually that income tax surcharge that we were just talking about, and she was kind of justifying that is that she's opposed to any sort of additional tax on working families. Well, my question is, don't working families buy cigarettes or purchase alcohol or purchase items online or digital downloads? So it's kind of a little bit hypocritical of her to zero in on this one specific tax, cloaked in her concern for working families, when there's all these other taxes that are added on that, of course, will impact working families. So it'll be interesting to see where we go from here.
Let me ask you about this, because I know you've done a little bit of research into the digital download tax. When folks buy things on the internet, frequently, they see it as a cheaper way, an alternative to buying things. But our government in North Carolina now wants to tax that. What do you think the effect of that would be?
Well, probably the number one effect will be it'll encourage more, I hate to almost use the phrase, but black market operations. I mean, the technology moves so fast, and people can innovate and can find ways to skirt paying this tax if they want to purchase, music or what have you via the internet and digital downloads and such things. Chances are it's just going to encourage people to find ways to avoid paying the tax.
Well, and I know for a fact there are some online entrepreneurs that I know who have already made plans to move out of state. They've decided that if North Carolina goes through with this, then they just soon take their business elsewhere. And we also know that online giant Amazon has ended any agreements it had in North Carolina with local partners. And I believe Overstock joined them in that. So for an industry that's often touted as the clean type of industry that we want, we are running them out as quickly as we can. So where do we go from here? If the governor decides to veto or a pocket veto, a threat of a veto, where do we go from there?
Well, it's really hard to tell. But one thing that Purdue also was coming out is talking about how she wanted to actually raise even more tax revenue. She wanted to approve a tax plan that raised even more than the 982 million that they're proposing. So this is kind of what we get with government, and they're talking about taxes. And it was funny, I saw in a news account today talking about this tax package that was approved. They're describing it as some sort of a middle ground, a compromise, between the House and Senate. But I look back, the Senate's original proposal was 840 million in taxes. House original proposal was 784 million in taxes. So their compromise, quote unquote, was to raise taxes almost $1 billion.
So it sounds like the only party that compromised were the taxpayers.
Yeah, exactly. We're the ones being compromised, I guess you could put it. So, I think the longer that this gets drawn out, the greater chances that the taxes are just going to continue to climb. So, I guess here's hoping that they get this thing wrapped up before they start going for $2 billion in new taxes.
Well, hopefully with the onset of fall, we will have an incentive for our legislators to get down to business and wrap this thing up in a responsible manner. So please join us again in the future when we will be talking about North Carolina's budget and our spending problem and our priority problem as well on our next edition of the Civitas Institute's Talk of the State program.